My name is SophiaTshabalala and I'm 27 years old. I hail from a tropical town in Limpopo called Tzaneen, and I am the middle child of three. Vusi, Vutomi and Vutivi, and together we are known as Triple V. We are the children of the late Reverend Gabriel Tshabalala and businesswoman Beatrice Tshabalala. Growing up, we had a healthy upbringing whereby we're a united front and were raised in a church by the church. When I was 12 years old and I was in grade 8, I was sent to boarding school, a school whereby I would only go home once a month. One Friday, I decided to ask for permission from the hostel so that we can go to a nearby park with my friends. So when we got to the near park, we decided otherwise. We decided that we want to go to the mall instead. And by then, we did not make any other further attempts to inform the school. It just so happened that my dad had also not informed the school that he would be visiting on that Friday. So when he got to the school, he could not find me, and he went to the park and he also could not find me. He made attempts to go around looking for me, and after a few hours, he eventually decided to drive back home. By the time I returned to the school, I received the message that I missed my dad by a matter of minutes. I quickly rushed to a public phone and made attempts to call him, and I could not get hold of him through the phone. The following day, it was on a Saturday, my uncle came to fetch me from boarding, and he said that we are going home. But instead, we went to a local hospital. And when I got there, I found that my mom was discharged. And that is when I learned that the previous day, when my dad left the school, he actually committed suicide. How the story was narrated to me is that they could not get hold of him. So my mom and his friend decided to drive to where he was staying for work purposes, because he was also working as a chaplain. So when they got there, they found that where he was staying, there was a passage, like a guard of honor made out of roses, leading to the bedroom. So when they walked in there, the house was spotless clean. When they walked in there, they went to the bedroom and they found him hanging in the wardrobe. What I learned about suicide at that time is that when you die, you do not go with your pain, but instead you transfer your pain to the next person. My father died without leaving a note, and in the past he was generally a happy person, so no one sensed that there was anything wrong with him. With him dying, it led to a lot of confusion and a lot of blame game within the family. Unfortunately, my mom bore most of the pain, and as much as I was a child, I saw what I saw and I heard what I heard. And more than anything, that week leading to my father's funeral, it left me with so much pain, witnessing and looking at my mom crying the way that she did. Unfortunately, after the funeral, I had to go back to school. And as young as I was, and not knowing how to deal with grief, I found myself carrying so much pain and anger. I often wondered, had I not gone to the mall that day and my dad found me, because I was his favorite little girl, was he going to take me and kill himself with me? Or was he there to bid me farewell? Even then, with that, I had questions that I could never get answers to. Too much, 2005, it changed my life in ways I could never imagine, in ways one could never imagine. Thankfully, the adults in my life saw the change in my behavior. They saw that I was not dealing with grief in the right ways, and they recommended a psychologist for me. All I knew at that time is that I was seeing someone every Tuesday and Thursday, and by the time when she leaves, I was feeling great. I felt amazing. And when I later on in life learned that it was actually a psychologist, that is when I started to appreciate and know and understand that grief at the age of 12 caused me depression, and through the help of everyone around me, I was able to beat it. Having been born and raised in a church, it was no wonder that I actually met a boy at church. The day after I turned 14, I started dating. I started dating a boy that I had met at church. And for the next 9 years that followed in our lives, we continued to go strong. We went to the same high school, same university, same church, and later on in life even worked for the same company. To me, he was my best friend. We met at a time whereby we were both young and we didn't have any material things to show, but we loved finer things in life. So we used to make sacrifices for each other, and throughout the 9 years we kept on making sacrifices for each other and we're investing on each other. And for me, the best years or the best memories of my teenage life include him. To me that was true love. So to finally be able to marry my best friend after 9 years, it seemed like an achievement. He had first asked me to marry him when I was 17 years old, a weekend before I could write my final matric exam. When he asked me to marry him, I was very excited, but I asked him to wait for me so that we both finished school, because he was only 2 grades ahead of me. So basically he was doing his second year in university. And for the years that followed, he kept on asking me, and because he was really excited, but I kept on re-emphasizing the message. And eventually, at some point, even when I went to university, I decided to drop out of university. And finally, in 2015, he gave me an ultimatum. He said, if by the end of the year you don't marry me, then I'm giving up. When you are ready to get married, then you'll come pay lobola for me. So it just so happened that in 2016, I fell pregnant, and my due date to get married was December. So as the families came together, we decided December versus August, rather move the wedding to August. And the first weekend of August 2015, we had a traditional celebration, one of the best days, and I felt honored and appreciated, and it also felt like a reward from God, because I had been faithful for so many things in life. The very same year, the 23rd of December, I gave birth to a healthy, bouncing baby boy. And I remember the hospital room being filled with so much love and joy, and both families were united. I remember that day like it was yesterday, because that was the last day I was happy. I got discharged from hospital on the 25th of December, and it was on Christmas Day, and I was so excited to go home with my son. But from the moment I got home, there was just one fight after the other. Our 2 families were fighting against each other. Both families wanted us, even though the initial agreement was that I would go to my mother's house because this is my first child. The fight went on so much on Christmas that my husband finally stood up and he took off his ring. Having witnessed that whole scenario, I decided I think it's best that I go to my in-laws house. A few days later, I followed my husband and I went to my in-laws house. That was the worst decision I had ever made. From the moment we got there, that was my first time spending time at my in-laws house. From the moment we got there, they used to tell me that there are things that they want to do for my son. And whenever I would ask, what are those things? I would often get told, you are too young, you won't understand. And I remember having discussions with my husband, and I said, we are not going to do anything to my son unless we agree on it. And right now, I don't think there's anything wrong with my son, so we are not going to do anything. So in our bedroom, we agreed on that. However, each and every single day I woke up and had fight with other relatives of his family. I remember when my son was a few days old, I think he was 7 days old. The one night when we're sitting in the living room, I kept on hearing people getting phone calls saying that we'll see you tomorrow at 12, see you tomorrow at 12. And indeed, tomorrow came. And when we woke up, people did not go to work. So I noticed that indeed there is something going on. And at around 11:30, my husband received a call and he said, I will come fetch you at 12. And finally, I remember asking him, where are we? Everyone is going somewhere at 12. Where exactly are you going? And he said, oh, I didn't tell you. Just get ready. We are going. You and the baby must get ready. We are going. And he stood up and left. I was asking him, where are we going? And he did not give me an answer. I don't know what happened, but something inside of me did not feel right. And I immediately started crying. I was crying so heavily for hours, and people kept on coming in the house. They were asking me, why am I crying? And I said, I do not know, but something inside of me is telling me to cry. Something is not all right. Where exactly are we going? And everyone just, the moment I asked them where we're going, they walked away. Eventually at around 3 p.m, I finally stopped crying and they said, we are ready, we can go. And I was surprised that wherever we are going, it could wait for me to stop crying and be okay. So there was no time limit. But nonetheless, we got in the car and I was holding my child, and we got in the car and we drove to a nearby village. When we got there, from the moment we got to the gate, I just knew that they took me to a Sangoma's house. I remember standing by the gate, holding my son so tight. I was crying. I started crying again, and I held my husband. I was like, I asked you what you believe in, and you told me you believe in the same God that I do. What are we doing here? And he just pushed me away. He said, you're being dramatic. We're not here to kill anyone. We're here to save our child. The ladies, the female relatives from his side that were with, they just said, let's go in, let's go in. And I was just crying heavily. I remember getting in there, and the Sangoma took my son, and she asked me 3 questions that needed a simple yes or no. And I did not answer. The one relative kept on saying yes, yes, yes. And the Sangoma was like, I need the mother's permission to do the procedure. And I remember gathering enough strength to stop crying, and I said, lady, you can see that I'm here against my will. So you do whatever procedure you need done so that I can get my son and leave. She then proceeded to do whatever rituals that she did on my son. And I was just, throughout the whole process, when she was busy, I was just praying and crying. And for me, that experience being in there, it was really traumatizing. But for everyone being in there, it seemed normal for them. And even going back home for the next couple of days that followed, I found myself being attacked time and again. Now the relatives, the in-laws that I grew up right in front of their eyes, I mean, I met them when I was only 14 years. Now I am 22. But the people that I'm faced with, the people that I see each and every day, I do not recognize them. The vulgar language that they used to use on me each and every single day, because I kept on fighting, saying that I will not allow my child to use the muti. I remember the one time, one of the relatives she literally took a blanket and put it on the floor right by our bedroom door. She opened the bedroom door and she started swearing at me. She sat down. There was nothing I could do. I just sat there and I just cried myself. I found myself isolating myself from everyone else because I did not want my friends nor my family to witness what I was going through. Even worse, people that I've always known, I did not understand or did not know how to explain what I was witnessing. It got so bad that on one fateful day, I just decided, you know what, maybe it's best if I just abandon my son here. You guys do whatever you want with him. When you are done, call me and I'll come fetch him. Thankfully, the one aunt came to the rescue and she said, I think it's best if you take your child and go back home. But then I was also reluctant, saying when I'm at home, I'm comfortable, but I'm being attacked, saying that maybe they married me too early. Maybe I was not ready. I'm not ready to be a wife for staying in my mother's house. My family does not have a problem, but my in-laws are causing me problem. Now I'm in the in-laws' houses. I'm being mistreated each and every single day. What am I supposed to do? And then she came up with a solution that maybe it would be best if we both came back to our house here in Johannesburg. My husband traveled back to Johannesburg, and all of a sudden when it's my turn to come back, he did not want me to come back. I remember I used to beg him and fight, and this one day I remember telling him, if you don't give me permission to come back, I'm just going to wake up on a random day and come there. And he said, Sissy, if you force yourself to come here, you will find the locks changed. And then I stayed. And on one random day, when he finally reluctantly said yes, 5 a.m. the following day, I was already halfway to Joburg. I regret ever forcing myself to come back this side. From the time I came back here, my husband was never the same person. I was struggling to heal properly from down there after having given birth to my son. And now it was a couple of weeks and I still was not healing. I was pregnant when we got married. Even though we had been staying together for the past 10 months before we got married, even though we had all this experience at university of cohabiting or of playing mandwana there, this was officially the first time we are together as husband and wife, and I would be able to do wifely duties, but I could not because I had just had a baby. My husband used to remind me each and every single day that he waited 9 years for me, so I needed to perform. The one time I remember I was cooking up with the one hand and I had my son on the other hand, because he believed that as a woman I should be able to perform domesticated duties. And he also forcefully pushed that we should engage in intercourse. But unfortunately, I was still hurting down there. And this one day he came back and he said, if you can't satisfy me in the bedroom, it's better. You know, we stay next to Alex here. There's a college close by. I have a car. I can go park my car there and I can have any girl that I want. And in the previous weeks, I had asked him, can you please get me a helper? And he refused, and he said, you are a woman and you are in the house. Don't make a baby an excuse. You are not the first woman to have a baby. You need to perform your wifely duties. Now, all of a sudden, my husband could not get me a helper in the kitchen, but he was brave enough to tell me that he could get me a helper in the bedroom. Those words alone killed something inside of me. That was not even the worst part. Not only was I being mistreated through words and actions by my husband, I used to receive calls from the relatives saying very hurtful things to me. Whenever I tried to ignore their calls, my husband would tell me that maybe you were not ready, maybe I married you by mistake because you don't accept my family. So I had to take the phone calls and listen to them swear at me at the other end of the line. The one time, every time initially I used to tell him what they used to say to me, and it would be like, how dare they say such things to my wife? But then the next day he would use the very same words at me. The one time I remember he said, I'm a rich spoiled brat who will never understand poor people problems, simply because I asked for 50 rand to relax my hair, and the other relatives had other needs that he wanted to satisfy. So when I asked, can't you just take 50 rand from that money since I'm not earning enough now that I'm on maternity leave, he took it as an offense of me being a brat and me not accepting his family. All of those different scenarios went on for a couple of months, and I had drifted away from a lot of people. I had even pushed away my friends and started befriending his friends and their wives, thinking that maybe if they see this new person that I see, maybe they'll be able to step in and help me. For me, my breaking point, even though my husband had taken off his ring, we were dating for 9 years. We got married in August 2015. The problem started in December. But already by February 2016, my husband had long taken off his ring. There were days whereby I used to beg him and say, please tell me you love me. When we were growing up, you used to tell me you love me more than 10 times a day. Now you can't even say it once. And he said, I can't force myself to something that I don't feel. When I feel like it, I will tell you. And now, eventually, after all these months of experiencing different things, there happened to be 1 week whereby a series of traumatizing events just seemed to happen, and it was never ending. The one time my mother came to visit us without informing us. And when she was there, phone calls started going in and out between him and his relatives, like, what is that thing doing there? There had been many instances whereby my mother, my rock, my everything was called a thing, Shilo. And I just sat there and kept quiet. The last few months I had become so quiet anyway. I had been blamed for my husband gaining weight because that's the kind of nonsense I cooked for him. All those months I stayed with him and cooked. He couldn't tell that I can't cook. All of a sudden, because he married me, he paid lobola for me, I cook nonsense. I get blamed for his weight loss. All those different months, I had lost so much weight. And people were noticing, and his relatives would laugh at my face and say, you used to be a beautiful model, but look at you now. Those words cut deep, but nonetheless, I still stayed. Even that week, I heard them call my mother a thing, Shilo. And when I spoke with my aunt, she advised me that, baby, it's time you protect your mother. I remember the one day I took the phone and I called my mother. I said, my marriage is suffering because of you. I think it's best that we cut contact. She said, my baby, I'll do anything as long as you are happy. I will stop contacting you and I will stop coming to your house. And I even informed my husband of what I did, and he said, okay. On that Friday, my husband came home happy. For the first time in a long time, he was a happy person in the house. And even though he didn't do anything special for me, I was also happy because for the first time in a long time, he felt happy to be in the same space as me. So we had our moment in the bedroom and he went to the living room. Around 8 o'clock, I went out of the room to the sitting room to join my husband, and he was nowhere to be found. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, now it is midnight. My husband is nowhere to be found. Eventually around 2 a.m. I start panicking because he is not a person who stays out. He does not drink, he does not smoke. Then I start calling everyone, I start making phone calls to check if anyone has heard from him, and everyone's answer was, you were the last person to talk to him. Eventually at 6 a.m. that's when I said, I've stressed enough. I have not slept. I think it's time I go to the police station. I went to the police station and I remember the policeman laughing at me and said, he's a man. Relax, maybe he slept off. He went to get a snack somewhere and he fell asleep. Give him until 12 o'clock noon, and if he's still not back, you can come back and open a missing person file. 12 noon came back and all his phones were off and he was nowhere to be found. And everyone was saying the same thing. You were the last person to see or talk to him. I even remember the police saying, are you sure you guys did not have a fight? I said, I am certain. And they thought I was lying. When we went to the police station at 12 noon, I was with his friends, and the police advised that we need to go look for him at a list of mortuaries and hospitals around the area that they gave me. And I was just crying. I had cried so many times the last couple of months. But now, even the whole night, the previous night, I had been crying, but that felt different. It felt in my mind, I was already playing scenarios. I was already preparing myself to be a widow. As we were walking out of there, and I was so weak, our son was 6 months old by this time. As I was walking out there, I remember the one relative calling me on my phone. And she said, what did you and your mother do to our child? I was crying, but I gathered enough strength to stop crying and answer. I said, Ma, whatever you heard about me, assume it's true. Now what? She just said, no, do whatever you need to take to bring my child back. And that's what we did. We went back home. The friends went out to start looking for him. I stayed at home with our child. I think I lost weight over one night. And that was not even the worst case. Around 5 p.m., I received a call from the car tracker. They had located his car somewhere in Mpumalanga. On the left, there was a hotel. On the right, there was a cemetery. And in the center, there was a lake. And in my mind, we were broke. There was no food in the house. I looked at the navigator. It was 3 hours and few minutes away from Gauteng. He must have crossed toll gates. I thought there is no way he could have traveled there. I'm thinking they probably hijacked my husband. They killed him and threw him in the lake. That was what was going through my mind. But eventually, when the car tracker people got to the location, by now the car had moved. They found him at a nearby mall. When the car tracker people called me, they asked me why I was looking for him, because the man they found is surprised when they say there is a wife looking for him. I immediately asked for a confirmation that it was indeed him, and I heard his voice from the background, and I apologized for wasting their time. At that very moment, he switched on his phone and he sent me a message saying, I am coming home, love. 3 hours and few minutes away. From 5 p.m., I was counting. He only got home the following morning at 2 a.m. As soon as I saw him walk through the doors, I was like, thank you, God. For me, I had been praying for a sign. I said, God, please give me a sign that I need to get out of here. But the people that I had surrounded myself with, his friends, his family, they were like, no, remember 9 years. Whenever I was trying to move on, they were saying, 9 years. And in my heart of hearts, I was like, God, the man that I knew for 9 years is not the man that I married here. Believe it or not, as much as I had prayed for a sign, I still stayed. As few days went on, he left the house early in the morning and came back late. To date, I do not know where he went, why he went. There was never an explanation. On his first Father's Day, he decided to disappear on me. On that very Thursday, I remember I was at work. I received a phone call once again. It was from the relative. She said, my babe, I know you guys are having problems, but if you are having problems, rather come home and we discuss them, but there is no need to kill each other. I remember thinking to myself, you are calling me. What exactly are you trying to say? I'm only 22 years old. Are you trying to say that I'm trying to kill my husband? I don't even earn enough money to be able to bury him if he was to die. What exactly are you saying? And she hung up on me. She first told me that she had received an anonymous call, an anonymous tip. And she just wanted to let me know that there is no need for me to proceed with whatever plans I had. At that time, I decided it's not worth it. It's not worth it. I'm only 22 years old. The following day, I woke up and I sent him a text saying, I am moving out. I first let him go to work, and then I started packing and I sent that message. And I still have the message to date. Within a millisecond, he responded, okay. And just like that, that is how my marriage ended. 9 years, 9 wonderful years of dating. 10 months of trauma. And just like that, with the press of a button, my marriage was over. I packed up my bags, but I still had hope that he'll come back. And the families and people and the friends, people around me assured me that he would come back. I had cut off a lot of people in my life, so they did not, the people around me, the people that cared about me, did not know what was going on. But the people that cared most about him mostly knew, and they gave me false hope. I told myself I walked out from that situation, but the hard ones were the hard ones. As the months went by, I still stayed hopeful. And on this one day in October, I finally woke up and I saw a picture of him with another girl on social media. The picture was uploaded by the very same friends that were comforting me. To see that picture, everything inside of me just let loose. I could not control myself. I started crying uncontrollably in the office. Since we worked in the same office, I ran to the other side of the office to see if indeed he was not there. When I got there, I could see the checkers. I knew, I looked at his empty chair and I could not believe it. That 9 years, 10 months. 9 years, 10 months. And just like that, Vele Vele is over. I remember getting out of the office, getting into the car, and I was crying. I was crying. I was driving around in areas that I did not even know. I was crying. I looked at that picture over and over and over again. And I was driving around. I looked at that picture over and over and over again. And scenarios in my head were playing. From the moment we break up, his relatives were spreading rumors about me that na lawyer, I'm a witch. From the rumors went from I'm a witch to I was caught cheating on my husband, that is why he left. So many horrible things were said about me. My family wanted to protect me, but I was not talking. I could not open up. My mother, God silenced me. My mother tried so hard to give me love, but how do I accept love when I rejected her? I felt unworthy. I was driving around. I had hope. Everything in me, my head had made up its mind that it's living, but my heart had not accepted. I remember the one time the scenario kept on playing in my head over and over again. The day he came back and he told me about going to Alex. Eventually, I opened my legs and said, look, I'm saying I'm in pain. I'm not faking. And for a second, I thought maybe he would understand. I really believed he would fix things. Suddenly, my chest felt tight. I felt like I could not breathe. The pain had gotten so much. I had been crying myself to sleep every single night the past few months. My name had been tarnished. My dad died because of suicide. I had seen what it did to our family. I had felt the pain. So I would never commit suicide. I just wanted the pain to stop, even if it's just for a second. I remember telling myself that at the next bridge that I'm going to find, I'm just going to drive over it. I was not familiar with the area, so I was just driving around, singing praise songs and looking at the pictures. And finally, I saw a bridge. And as I was approaching the bridge, my phone was ringing uncontrollably from my cousin who was with my son. And also my car suddenly had technical problems. It was doing some funny things and it was about to stop. And as I was approaching the bridge and I was just a few meters away from it, my car stopped. That moment, God came through for me. The past few months, I had joined prayer groups. I was fasting midnight, 3 a.m., 8 a.m. We were praying. If God wanted to change my situation, he would have changed it those past few months, the moment I picked up my bags. But he didn't. At that time, what I did not realize is that what I was actually praying for was for myself. As I stood next to that bridge, I just broke down. And that was a turning point for me. As I drove away from the bridge, at the next robot, I was still crying heavily. My car stopped again and the robot was red. I remember a gentleman coming to my window, walking by my window. They're like, sis, it's not safe here. Drive in, they're waiting for you. And as I drove in, that's when I saw the big words written, Rhema Bible Church. I went in there and I said, my name is SophiaTshabalala. I am not okay. I'm not a member of your church. I most probably never will be, but I know you have counseling. Please help me. I tried counseling the last couple of months, but every time I went to counseling and the psychologist would say I have depression, I would change psychologists. Like me, I'm strong. I'm too strong to have depression. I would break down every time I looked at myself in the mirror because it felt like whatever I was going through, the stress was eating me from the inside. I had lost so much weight. I had become bony. The one day when I walked in the office, the one colleague said, where are you going, Butomi? And I said, I'm going to my desk. She was like, no, that's not what I was asking you. You've lost so much weight. You look like you're ready to disappear. And I felt that because that is exactly how I felt inside. I felt invisible. And walking into church, I found a pastor. He said one sentence that changed my life. He said, the Bible commands a woman to be respectful. And the Bible says that the man is the head of the family. You were respectful to your husband. Your family was the leader and he is the one who led you in the direction that you led you. You did as the Bible commanded. And in the eyes of God, you have no sin. And just like that, everything inside of me, I felt it being released. I finally wanted to leave. All those years, 9 years, when we met, I was only 14 years. I was very young. Everything that we had, it was us. All the plans, all the dreams, it was us. I never in a single day imagined myself as me. In the months that followed, I started to dream. I allowed myself to start dreaming. I allowed myself to start healing. I allowed myself to get help. I opened up to my family. I allowed myself to receive the love that the people around me were willing to give me, the love that I had forgotten. I had forgotten my worth. It took me 2 years of fighting, 2 years wanting to leave, but eventually I healed. My name is SophiaTshabalala, and I have been through the most.